Genghis Khan had rose the Mongols from a small collection of tribes to a vast empire that stretched from the Pacific to the Caspian Sea. With his death, the empire would switch to a new great Khan. His successor would be his third son, Ögedei, and he would be formally elected in 1229. He would make his headquarters in central Mongolia, where he built the capital city of Karakorum on the site laid out by his father. Like his father, he carried out several simultaneous campaigns, using generals in the field who acted independently but who were subject to his orders. Among his first actions, Ögedei's armies would begin pushing into northern China, crushing the eastern Xia and launching an attack on the Jin dynasty. The Song dynasty in South China would join the war as they wished to regain territory lost to the Jin, allying themselves with the Mongols and helping Ögedei take the Jin capital in 1234. Ögedei's Chinese advisors would convince him to reverse previous Mongol policy. Instead of leveling North China and all its inhabitants in the usual Mongol manner, he preserved the country in order to utilize the wealth and skills of its inhabitants. Shortly after, Ögedei would begin several attempts to annex the Korean peninsula, which would be met by stiff resistance and result in little success. Meanwhile, in the west, the Mongol forces would conquer what was left of the depleted Khwarezmian Empire, and the remaining small kingdoms in southern Persia and Tibet would willingly submit to Mongol authority. Batu Khan, another grandson of Genghis Khan, would begin a sustained invasion of the nations in the southern Russian steppe, and by 1237 the Mongols were encroaching upon Ryazan. After a 3-day siege involving fierce fighting, the Mongols captured the city and would massacre its inhabitants. They then would destroy the main Rus army at the Battle of Sit River, and by 1240 almost all of the Kievan Rus had fallen to the superior Mongol horsemen. Mongol troops from Persia would invade Transcaucasia, forcing the Georgian and Armenian nobles to surrender, which would connect the Mongol lands with Batu's invasion. Despite the decisive military successes, strife continued within the Mongol ranks between Batu, Goyak, Ögedei's oldest son, and Buri, the beloved grandson of Chagatai Khan. The Mongol advance into Europe would continue with the invasions of Poland and Hungary. The Europeans would form an alliance among the Poles, the Moravians, and the Christian holy orders of the Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights, and the Templars, which would briefly halt the Mongol advance, but soon be defeated at the banks of the Sajo River in 1241. But before Batu's forces could continue on to Vienna in northern Albania, Ögedei would die in December 1241, which would halt the invasion. As was customary in the Mongol military tradition, all princes of Genghis's line had to attend to elect a successor. Temujin, with the help of Chagatai and her sons, would assume complete power as regent in spring 1242. She would immediately dismiss her late husband's ministers and replace them with her own. Temujin, who had friendly relations with Ögedei's commanders in China, would order them to send an envoy to negotiate peace to the Song, who would decline the offer and imprison the envoy. In response, the Mongols would renew their attacks, capturing several border fortifications and pillaging deep into the Song territory. The Song court would be forced to send a delegation to propose a ceasefire. The Mongols would accept the terms and withdraw back north. In the west, the Mongols would begin raiding across Anatolia in 1240. The kingdoms on the peninsula would raise a force to counter the invaders, and the Seljuk army would meet the Mongols at the Battle of Kösteg, where they would be decisively defeated in 1243. After that battle, the Sultanate of Rum, the Empire of Trebizond, and the Lesser Armenia quickly declared their allegiance one by one to the Mongol Empire. After the conquest of Anatolia, the Mongol troops would divert their attention, sending probing raids against the Abbasids and Ayyubids. In 1246, Gayuk would be elected as the next great Khan. To secure his position, he also restored his father's officials to power. Goyak reversed several unpopular edicts of his mother and made a surprisingly capable Khan, appointing advisors in Persia in preparation for an attack on Baghdad and the Ayyubids, and pursuing a war against the Song dynasty. Gayuk was a strict and intelligent person, though during his reign he would be rather sickly, and his bad drinking habit worsened his health. Although Batu did not support Göyek's election, he respected the Great Khan as a traditionalist. In 1248, he demanded Batu come towards Mongolia to meet him, a move that some contemporaries regard as pretext for Batu's arrest. In compliance with the order, Batu approached, bringing a large army. When Göyek moved westwards, Batu was warned that he might be the target, but before their two armies could meet, Göyek, sick and worn out by travel, would die. Göyek's widow would step forward to take control of the empire, but she would lack the skills of her mother-in-law, and her authority would be severely challenged. To decide on a new Great Khan, Batu called an assembly on his own territory in 1250. As it was far from the Mongolian heartland, many members refused to attend. The assembly offered the throne to Batu, but he would reject it, claiming he had no interest in the position. Batu instead would nominate Möngke, a grandson of Genghis, from his son Tuli's lineage. The pro-Tuli faction supported Batu's choice, and Möngke was elected, though given the assembly's limited attendance and location, the validity was questioned. Batu would send Möngke to assemble a more formal assembly in the Mongolian heartland, and on July 1st, 1251, Möngke would be proclaimed Great Khan at a second assembly. This marked a major shift in the leadership of the empire, transferring power from the descendants of Genghis' son Ögedei to the descendants of Genghis' son Tuli. Möngke confiscated the estates of the Ögedei and Chagatai families and shared the western part of the empire with his new ally Batu Khan, securing the throne for the descendants of Tuli, where it would remain for the rest of the Mongol Empire. In a move to consolidate his power, Möngke continued his predecessor's struggle against the Song dynasty. In order to outflank the Song from three directions, Möngke dispatched Mongol armies under his brother Kublai to Yuan and under his uncle to subdue Korea and pressure the Song from that direction as well. Kublai conquered the Dali kingdom in 1253. Möngke would approve new invasions of the Middle East before Hulagu arrived with a large force in 1256. They would turn their attention to Baghdad, the center of the Islamic Empire, which had held power for 500 years, but was suffering internal divisions. The Abbasids would refuse to submit to Mongol rule, and Baghdad would be besieged and captured by the Mongols in 1258 and be subject to a merciless sack, an event considered one of the most catastrophic events in the history of Islam. With the collapse of the Abbasid Caliphate, Hulagu had an open route to Syria and moved his army toward the Ayyubid land, capturing small local states en route. When Hulagu headed further west, the Armenians, Seljuks, and Christian realms of Antioch and Tripoli submitted to Mongol authority, joining them in their assault against the Muslims. While some cities surrendered without resisting, others fought back, and their populations were massacred and the cities were sacked. Meanwhile, in the northwestern portion of the empire, dissatisfaction began brewing between the northwestern and southwestern sections of the Mongol Empire, as Batu suspected that Hulagu's invasion of Western Asia could result in the elimination of Batu's own dominance there. In the southern part of the empire, Möngke Khan himself led his army, but did not complete the conquest of China. Military operations were generally successful but prolonged, so the forces did not withdraw to the north, as was customary when the weather turned hot. The army would become ravaged by disease and bloody epidemics, and Möngke Khan would die there on August 11, 1259. This event began a new chapter in the history of the Mongols, as again a decision needed to be made on a new Great Khan, and Mongol armies across the empire drew from their campaigns to convene at a new assembly.